Welcome back, second grade. In our last episode, we defeated all the witches of Inkland, of England. We've even done away with the Grand High Witch, turned them all into mice. We rehomed Bruno with his parents who, not as reluctant as before, maybe. We've made our way out of the hotel, left our suitcase, left our belongings. Don't even care about that. Let's get out of this place. And it looks like we're heading back to Norway. Is this a happy ending? We have 2 more chapters, including today's chapter. So let's find out. The Heart of a Mouse. It was lovely to be back in Norway once again in my grandmother's fine old house. Now that I was so small, everything looked different, and it took me quite a while to find my way around mine. Mine was a world of carpets and table legs and chair legs and the little crannies behind large pieces of furniture. A closed door could not be opened, and nothing could be reached that was on a table. But after a few days, my grandmother began to invent gadgets for me in order to make life a bit easier. She got a carpenter to put together a number of slim, tall step ladders, and she placed one of these against each table in the house so that I could climb up whenever I wanted to. She herself invented a wonderful door-opening device made out of wires and springs and pulleys with heavy weights dangling on cords, and soon every door in the house had a door opener on it. All I had to do was to press my front paws onto a tiny wooden platform, and hey, presto! A spring would stretch and a weight would drop and the door would swing open. Next, she rigged up an equally ingenious system whereby I could switch on the light whenever I entered a room at night. I cannot explain how it worked because I know nothing about electricity, but there was a little button let into the floor near the door in every room in the house, and when I pressed the button gently with one paw, the light would come on. When I pressed it a second time, the light would go off again. My grandmother made me a tiny toothbrush using a matchstick for the handle, and into this she stuck little bits of bristle that she had snipped off one of her hairbrushes. "You must not get any holes in your teeth," she said. "I can't take a mouse to a dentist. He'd think I was crazy." "It's funny," I said, "but ever since I became a mouse, I've hated the taste of sweets and chocolate, so I don't think I'll get any holes." "You're still going to brush your teeth after every meal," my grandmother said, and I did. For a bathtub, she gave me a silver sugar basin, and I bathed in it every night before going to bed. She allowed no one else in the house, not even a servant or a cook. We kept entirely to ourselves, and we were very happy in each other's company. One evening, as I lay in my grandmother's lap in front of the fire, she said to me, "I wonder what happened to that little Bruno." I would be surprised if his father gave him to the hall porter to drown in the fire bucket, I answered. "I'm afraid you might be right," my grandmother said. "The poor little thing." We were silent for a few minutes, my grandmother puffing away at her black cigar while I dozed comfortably in the warmth. "Can I ask you something, Grandmama?" I said. "Well, ask me anything you like, my darling." "How long does a mouse live?" "Ah," she said, "I've been waiting for you to ask me that." There was a silence. She sat there smoking away and gazing at the fire. "Well," I said, "how long do we live, us mice?" "I have been reading about mice," she said. "I have been trying to find out everything I can about them." "Go on then, Grandmama. Why don't you tell me?" "If you really want to know," she said, "I'm afraid a mouse doesn't live for a very long time." "How long?" I asked. "Well, an ordinary mouse only lives for about 3 years," she said. "But you're not an ordinary mouse. You are a mouse person, and it is a very different matter." "How different?" I asked. "How long does a mouse person live, Grandmama?" "Longer," she said. "Much longer." "How much longer?" I asked. "A mouse person will almost certainly live for 3 times as long as any ordinary mouse," my grandmother said. "About 9 years." "Oh, good," I cried. "That's great. It's the best news I've ever had." "Why do you say that?" she asked, surprised. "Because I would never want to live longer than you," I said. "I couldn't stand being looked after by anybody else." There was a short silence. She had a way of
fondling me behind the ears with the tip of one finger. It felt lovely. "How old are you, Grandmama?" I asked. "I'm 86, she said. "Will you live another 8 or 9 years?" "I might," she said, "with a bit of luck." "You've got to," I said, "because by then I'll be a very old mouse, and you'll be a very old grandmother, and soon after that we'll both die together." "Oh, that would be perfect," she said. I had a little doze after that. I just shut my eyes and thought of nothing and felt at peace with the world. "Would you like me to tell you something about yourself that is very interesting?" my grandmother said. "Yes, please, Grandmama," I said, without opening my eyes. "I couldn't believe it at first, but apparently it's quite true," she said. "What is it?" I asked. "The heart of a mouse," she said, "and that means your heart is beating at the rate of 500 times a minute. Isn't that amazing?" "That's not possible," I said, opening my eyes. "It is true as I'm sitting here," she said. "It's a sort of a miracle." "That's nearly 9 beats every second," I cried, working it out in my head. "Correct," she said. "Your heart is going so fast it's impossible to hear the separate beats. All one hears is a soft humming murmur." She was wearing a lace dress, and the lace kept tickling my nose. I had to rest my head on my front paws. "Have you ever heard my heart humming away, Grandmama?" I asked her. "Often," she said. "I hear it when you are lying very close to me on the pillow at night." The two of us remained silent in front of the fire for a long time after that, thinking about these wonderful things. "My darling," she said at last, "are you sure you don't mind being a mouse for the rest of your life?" "I don't mind it at all," I said. "It doesn't matter who you are or what you look like so long as somebody loves you."
Well, it looks like we have a little bit of a happy ending. Grandmama has modified this house so that this mouse person can navigate it, open doors, levers, and pulleys. We've got created gadgets. We can turn the lights on. He can get everywhere he needs. Actually sounds kind of fun on his end. We have the discussion of the mortality, life and death of a mouse, and the neat fact is a mouse's heartbeat goes 500 beats a minute. In reference, your heart probably goes anywhere from 55 resting to upwards of 160, 180 when you're just running and all out, sweating hot. So 500 beats a minute. Challenge to you, can you even count to 500 in a minute? That's got to be pretty tough to think that that mouse heartbeat goes 500 times a minute, and I'm sure it can go even faster, I would assume, if it's scared, if it's running, doing things like that. So he's living with Grandmama. That is their new life. They're back in Oslo. They're back in Norway. We'll see in our last episode. Next episode will be the last chapter. Hopefully we've got happiness ever after there. I mean, we kind of have it here, so I don't know what the last chapter is going to be. We'll see you next episode.